Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday seminar Rabuan. And I'm very happy to moderate the session for today. And today we gonna talk about healthy planet, healthy people, insights into planetary health. And my name is Dr. Daniel from Department of Health Behavior, Environment, and Social Medicine at the Faculty of Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and I will be your moderator for today. And first of all, thank you for all of you who joined us this morning. And I hope in Jogja the weather is not really good today, but I hope you are in a good mood so we can have a lot of insights from two speakers, international speakers. And I want to greet first the first speaker, and it's an honor to have Dr. Remco van de Pas. Good morning, Dr.
Good
Remco.
morning, Danny.
Yeah,
Do you hear me?
yes, I can hear you very well. Thank
Great.
you. And the
Wonderful.
second speaker we have Dr. Tran Thi Tuyet Han from Hanoi University of Public Health, Vietnam. Good morning, Dr. Han.
Hello, Daniel. Hello,
Yes, good
everyone.
morning.
Sorry, my name is too long. So just call me Han.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Dr. Han. Yeah, thank you for all both speakers who can give presentations for this morning. But before I start, we still need to wait for other students to join the session. So for warm up discussions, I want to share a bit. I have two questions for you. Can I have? I want to share my screen. Can I share my screen, please, panel? I want to share my screen. Oh, yes. Okay. I have to, yes, hope you can see my screen. Yes. I have two questions here. And the first one, this is just for warm up. We start the discussion and presentations. I have one question here. The first one is, if the planet could speak, what do you think it would say about us right now? This is reflective questions. The first one's thank you for taking care of me. Second options, I'm struggling, please slow down. C, I'm fine, humans will adapt. And D, it's complicated, we need to talk. So may I ask everyone to type your answer in the chat box. What do you think if the planet could speak? What will they say about us human right now? Because today we're gonna talk about planetary health, and everything happens in the planet. It affect also us, and we also at the same time we also do a lot of things that affect the planet health. So if they can speak about us, what do you think they will say about human? Okay, most of you say D. Yes, it's complicated. We need to talk. Okay, it's very interesting. Correct and wrong answer, right and wrong answer here. Just want to ask your reflections. Oh, B. Okay, B. I'm struggling. Please slow down. Okay. Other questions, other comments for this one? Okay, I think people say D. It's complicated. We need to talk. Yes, indeed. I agree. Maybe we will hear a lot of things about these complicated things during the talk from Remco. And other question, other answer. Okay, we will go to the second questions. The second question is, if you had to describe the current relationship between people and the planet in one word, so only one word, one fits best: healthy, fragile, broken, or transforming. Okay, this is like a relationship between us and planet. What do you think? Healthy relationship, or fragile, broken? Yeah. What do you think about the second question here? The relationship between people and the planet and world. Okay, fragile, interesting. Okay. D, transforming. Okay. Again, there is no right and wrong answer here. Just want to ask your reflections, opinion about this. Other comments, other answer from about this second questions? C, broken. Okay, interesting. This is the okay, broken. I don't think okay. I'm interested if someone want to say about healthy relationship between planet and us. But I think most of us will say either B, C, or D. Okay, D, B, yes. Okay, thank you for your thought on these two questions. I hope these two questions can inspire and we can have a fruitful conversation and discussion with two speakers. And I will start directly. I need to stop this one. Okay, yes. So yes, thank you again for your answer. And it's I'm very happy to see a lot of different perspective from all the participants. So before I start, I want to introduce a bit about the seminar Rabuan or Wednesday seminar. It's a regular seminar conducted by the public health major from Universitas Gajah Mada, and we usually have bi-weekly online seminar, and we often invite people from outside UGM or outside Indonesia sometimes, or sometimes the lecture give also thoughts or topics during the seminar. And today we have two amazing speakers, and we're gonna talk about planetary health, healthy planet, healthy people, insights into planetary health, and we will get short introductions about planetary health from the first, and the second we will deep dive. We will deeper to the case study from Vietnam. So I hope these two speakers can inspire a lot of participants, especially the students from UGM. So we have a broader perspective about the environmental health, planetary health. So yes, to start, we will start with the first speaker. We have Dr. Remon Depas from the United Nations University International Institute for Global Health. Okay, this is quite a long name. And yes, Dr. Remco has a lot of experience in planetary health. He graduated from Netherlands, University of Nijmegen, Amsterdam, and Maastricht University, and now he is works in the UN institutions located in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So he's very close actually to us, and he gonna talk about understanding planetary health as a new paradigm for global well-being. So we are very happy to have Dr. Remco, and you have about 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes presentations. And before I start, I encourage everyone, please ask any question. There's no stupid questions, just ask any questions. You can type it in the chat or you can send to me directly. You can type it in Bahasa, doesn't matter. Type it English or Bahasa. By the way, Dr. Remco is also, he also can speak Bahasa, so don't worry to type it in Bahasa Indonesia. Or yes, and yeah, we will collect all the questions and we will have the Q&A after the second speaker. So please be active. Give any comments, thoughts, everything to the speakers, and we will discuss it after the presentations. And that's all from me. And Dr. Remco, the
Ya,
screen is yours.
baiklah. Selamat siang semua di sana.
Selamat siang.
So I'm happy to join you and thank you for the introduction. It's always a pleasure to work with colleagues in at UGM and in Indonesia. So you will find my profile and background at the website of the United Nations University International Institute for Global Health. This is a UN institution with the longest name that exists, I believe. Let me share my screen to the presentation. Do you see this now? I need to go to the complete beginning. Let me go there. I assume this is visible, huh? Dani, please confirm.
Yes.
Okay. So you can ask questions in the meantime, etc. That's perfectly fine. I can see if we can, yeah, we can see when we address them. Maybe it's good to say, so I'm a public health physician. Spend my time in academia and in NGOs. In the most of the time in the NGO field with doctors of the world and with a health policy organization called the Wemos Foundation, working with the People's Health Movement. So I've really worked quite a lot in policy advocacy and policy development, and more practical also in public health programs. Amongst others in Indonesia, and the longest period was in West Papua. That was about 15 years ago now. And I think this is relevant, where I spent 3 years in the highlands in working on primary healthcare and HIV/AIDS, working with the Dinas Kesehatan over there. And so I became very aware about the link between infectious disease outbreaks, inequities, environmental health. It's a difficult situation, also giving the tensions and the conflict that exist. So any exchange on that would be relevant. The longest academic work has been at the Institute of Tropical Medicine in Antwerp, with whom UGM also work closely together in the field of One Health. And I'm the policy research lead at UNU, Institute for Global Health, focusing on climate justice aspects. And that's what I will introduce now. To be clear, United Nations University is we have 14 institutes globally. We're part of the United Nations. We work with universities who are our main partners. We are doing the translation and not the elementary research or education ourselves. So in Malaysia, we work a lot with the University of Malaysia, and I'm looking forward also to work with UGM in the nearby future. I'll talk about planetary health now as an entry point for what I mean with it and why it has become so important. People talk about eco health, One Health, global health, and planetary health we need to relate to that paradigm and what it offers and don't offer vis-a-vis what we are already doing. So I will talk a bit about these 4 elements. It has to do with it's a complex topic, so I have to do it rather, it's really an introduction basically that invite for further discussion, for which I'm available. So the way how I look at this issue is through what we see is, and I think you recognize that also in Indonesia, is that we talk about modern development and economic growth and prosperity and well-being, but that prosperity and well-being come with its side effects. It's the externalities of modern development actions. The original work within the UN and outside has been done by a group called the Club of Rome, and work under the heading of the limits to growth. If we grow, there might also be resource extraction, there might be environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, etc. So we need to look at development practices in a much more holistic way. We cannot just expand. We need to also think about sufficiency. We need to think about that if we expand our cities and if we expand our economic activities, that we need to do that within the limits that our ecological and societal barriers allow. And I think that you feel in many urban areas Think about Jakarta that is slowly sinking under its citizens and urban weight, and that the water level is also sinking. Um, we need to project into the future the need to still have a healthy ecosystem for us to live on and to thrive on, and that is now really at risk. And this is where I will talk about. This image is an image that gives some ideas about it. Yes, we expanded globalization. Yes, we expanded trade, including in food products that are not always so healthy, um, including with food products that rely on intensive agricultural practices, but that come with deforestation and that come with risk for pandemics, like I'm thinking about mouth foot disease in Indonesia or avian influenza at the moment. Also, it comes with uh, uh, with all the trade and the livestock growth. There's also big greenhouse gas emissions that lead to problems themselves, and the problems are extreme weather events and floodings, as is seen in this picture from 3 years ago in East Australia. There was just a huge cyclone coming over Jamaica, and these weather events are really causing now damage. And we need to prepare and see how we can transform to really move back within planetary boundaries. And that's what I will talk about. And maybe Han can also talk a little bit about the experience in Vietnam with the cyclones that are arriving there, much more frequent now than in the past. So we have complex crises, and I think this is really something we need to relate with in our public health fields. We cannot think linear anymore and think about limited linear determinants that we need to address. We need to think about it in a complex way. And these complexities play out. It's like layers of issues that interact with each other, and then in this was come from COVID-19 that leads to problems. We cannot just look at the pathogen, a virus, COVID-19, without understanding that also disease outbreaks are enabled through a fragile ecosystem. So that we as public health professionals need to think about other disciplinary collaborations and requirements that really impact the determinants of health. Biodiversity, one health approach is an evidence one, but then the question is, how do we do that? How do we do this interdisciplinary work and collaboration? That's what I would like to hit on to a bit. But first, I don't know how often this is done or how much you are aware. I think I need to go back a little bit into the climate science and how things are at the moment. We will be at the climate summit in Belém in 2 weeks from now. The outline is frankly not so positive because action and committed policies and finance is more limited than is required. And the speed of action is also less than actually would be really required to remain in a relative safe space of 1.5 temperature degrees. So this is the science behind it, which says that we now have our global temperature has increased considerably vis-a-vis the 1900 baseline. This is from the IPCC, so this is a UN reporting. And we are now more or less at the 1.5 baseline, as was agreed in the Paris Agreement as a safe zone. So we're slowly entering into, let's say, dangerous area of for public health to thrive. And how it plays out is that in the ecosystem, we see a fast rise of sea level rise and of glaciers retreat, which is of risk, especially for low-lying coastal areas like Jakarta, like low island states, and in Indonesia, there's a lot of islands that are then also at risk, giving this sea level rise. As well, the symptoms that it brings is that it's not only so much the temperature that is increasing, but it's the precipitation and the more frequent events, whether it's droughts or extreme heat events, as all the ocean warming and acidification itself that causes so-called feedback loops or tipping points. You need to understand really from an ecosystem perspective, the Earth it's a complex adaptive system. And so so let's say one effect that will take place in one part of the planet, meaning for instance, ocean stream changes because of the water getting warmer. It might influence also conditions on the other side of the planet. So we cannot only think as localized problems anymore, but we need to understand its interrelatedness. The thing with climate change is that why it's difficult to address is that there's a kind of a pathway dependency. People tend to react on what they know, not on what the future projections are. And many leaderships and policymakers, they're now in my age, so people around born in the late in 70s, 80s, they're making the decisions. But they were born at a moment when climate risks were not as high as they are now. So they're working based on the presumption that things can still be managed. But if you would really make the projections and look from a younger perspective, then that might change. So there's really an intergenerational debate: is whose perspectives in the climate adaptation and mitigation are being considered. And being here with a younger health professional generation, I encourage you hence really to engage with these discussions. I was talking about tipping points. So this is for you to understand if temperatures increase, then so the impacts of climate change will not come gradually. They will come through so-called structural shocks and shifts in the system. That's how complex systems work. They balance, there's an equilibrium, and when they tip, then they come in another equilibrium state. I try to give you an example. Ocean heating leads to different precipitation. It might impact the monsoons, including in the region here, and the monsoons will have impact on the droughts and hence also of the landscapes in certain areas of the world. So for instance, they believe that there might be a risk that the Amazon, from being a tropical jungle environment, might quite quickly shift to become kind of a Sahel, a savanna type of environment, with huge impact on biodiversity. The same with the coral reefs discussion. Suddenly the oceans are too acidified, and ocean and coral reefs might die rapidly. And that's taking place at the moment as we speak. And that has an impact on the fisheries and the protein availability for all the communities that rely upon. So this kind of thinking is a planetary health thinking that I would like you to engage with. The current state of affairs, we I don't ask you to be climate scientists, but just to be aware about its current situation. There is trackers about where we are vis-à-vis the actions taken by states. I don't know if Indonesia submitted its national determined contributions for COP30. I don't think so. Dani, do you know, or someone else? How they would go to how to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. I don't think they made it. No, I don't think they made it, as far as I'm aware. But so there is pledges by countries regarding how they will go in 2050 to net zero. There is the overall Paris Agreement. But where we are now is really in a scenario. So we have pledges, and if we would commit to that, we might hit to 2 degrees Celsius. If we continue where we are now, we might hit about 2.5 by the end of this century, which would have huge consequences for societies. Of course, the main question is who is we? The impact of all these changes is taking place in a very different way across the globe. People take different risks, and many people who are in, let's say, places where there are more adaptation policies, they have much more possibilities to have the innovation and ways to protect themselves vis-à-vis those that are in lower income countries. So there's a real justice and equity element embedded in this discussion. Now, the impacts of a rising climate on health are and I'm just also looking at the chat in the meantime, are through pathways. It has influence on airborne and waterborne infections. This is very, very relevant for this community. There might be more salmonella infections. We see more cholera outbreaks in sub-Saharan Africa. In this region, there might be more vector-borne diseases and epidemics taking place because the habitat of, for instance, mosquitoes is increasing. So dengue outbreaks have become more prominent in the urban areas. That's what we see, all across the countries here. Air pollution through the smog, that is also that cannot escape also through the heat, leads to higher exposures of asthma and then cardiovascular disease, and hence has quite an impact on mortality. This is a slide from that talks about health-related mortality and changes due to extreme heat, and this comes from the Lancet Countdown, and the Lancet Countdown is the main academic publication that traces the impact. So I welcome you to have a look at it. Here you see that in red it's up to 5 to 10% of percentual change in some countries due to climate heat, to climate. It's basically the heat that exacerbates existing mortality. We also did it in the Netherlands. I will not refer to that at this moment. The way WHO deals with it is to have they have an expanded climate and health program that they work on during it's always presented at the climate summits and at the World Health Assembly each year, where they talk also about updated actions. They work in an alliance on it's called the Alliance on Transformative Action on Climate and Health. And basically it focuses on three key areas. One is really making health systems more resilient to the climate crisis, as well as thinking about sustainability of healthcare facilities, meaning how can we reduce the carbon impact of our healthcare facilities. And that's an important one because healthcare is about 5% of greenhouse gas emissions in several countries because of the energy it consumes, because of the single plastics that it uses, because of the medicines and the supply chain that it relies upon. So it's a energy intensive sector. And of course, it needs to adapt to deal with climate risks. So that's one big element. The second element is to think about the co-benefits of action in other sectors being beneficial for health. Think about urban mobility, public transport, urban greening, making food systems more sustainable through health promotion, availability of nutritious food products that are organic. So those have huge health impact. So we need to think about collaboration with other sectors. And then there's the whole, let's say, risk preparation, the disaster risk reduction that requires attention. So this is three key focus areas of WHO. I will only brief on this part just briefly to say that there's inequities within the system. So it's not the problem is not so much that one country is doing one thing and another country is not doing anything, but within countries there are large emitters and there are people that are hardly emitting but that are carrying the impact. So it's not so much persons who are the problem, but it's systems and the ultra rich on this planet that are using an enormous amount of carbon through their private jets, through their investments, through, for instance, Bitcoin harvesting and generation, because I mean, these big data centers, they cost a lot of energy. So there is really an inequity between income and class, and not necessarily by countries. Of countries have historic responsibilities, and the richer countries have a much higher responsibilities also in the climate finance dealing with the problem. But it's a common but differentiated responsibility. And I think this is important to understand that we really need to make sure that the ultra, especially the ultra wealthy and the billionaires of this planet, that they pay their fair share. For instance, through taxation, we can also think about debt cancellation, etc. But this is where the real injustice is coming from. So I know time is running quickly. So for the last 10 minutes, if I have that more or less, talk really about the planetary health angle to this. Planetary health. So that we need to think about so planetary health is really different from One Health or eco health approaches, is that it considers these these Earth system assessments as its conceptual entry point, and the one of the main researchers or thinkers in this field is someone called Johan Rockström, and work that has been done via the Stockholm Resilience Center and the Potsdam Impact Assessment Center from Berlin, where they talk about the impact of the Anthropocene, whereby there is something called the Great Acceleration. And the Great Acceleration is a theory that says, look, basically we have expanded travel, we have expanded financial investments, population has grown, the use of fertilizers has grown, but it comes with also impacts on the Earth system, deforestation, a runoff of nitrogen and phosphor in the soil, greenhouse gas emissions, tropical forest loss, etc. I think in Indonesia, as example, about 70% to 80% of its tropical forests are lost since the beginning of 1900, amongst others because of the plantations and the requirements. So it has negative impacts that we need to consider. And then planetary health brings those different considerations together and taking a much more transdisciplinary analysis, including also the social analysis of these impact for human health and what they would mean for both humans and the planet from a perspective like, okay, what can be solutions? What can we do in the here and now to really address these challenges? What can we do at the local level, within our nations, but also in our international collaborations, scientific work, education to safeguard our health. And this is then one of the main key slides or concepts. It is this planetary health, planetary boundaries concept that talks about different called safe spaces. So there's 9 indicators that talk about ecosystem integrity. You see them listed here. They're followed through via a website called Planetary Health Check, where you can have a look at it. And basically from those 9 indicators, they say, and it includes also freshwater availability. It includes chemicals and plastics into the atmosphere. So from these 9 indicators, 7 are being overshot. And once again, this is at the aggregated Earth system level, which plays out very differently at the national level. And I will explain that afterwards. But if you look at it if you would see the planet as a patient, and I think Dani would like to try to do that in the beginning of the session. If you would see the planet as a patient at the moment, it is really getting high fever and it has high blood pressure. It does not necessarily indicate a heart attack, but it might really increase the risk of doing so. You might have multi-organ failure as a human, and we can maybe deal with one organ failure, but we can't if those organs interact, which they do, then you really destabilize the system. And we can think of the Earth in a somewhat similar way. We need to return to a basic homeostasis. Now, I can tell you how we did it in our former work, or how we are doing this in our thinking about well-being at IHEH. The planetary health boundaries concept has been used by economists and others in a concept called donut economics or well-being economics, where we not only look at the ecological problem, but also at the social foundations. The social foundations that people need to thrive. It's also called human security or capabilities or basic service provision, access to water, food, energy, housing. This is where the real concerns of people are on a day-to-day basis. Cost of living. It's not so much about climate change and biodiversity losses of secondary concern for most of the people. So we need to bring these 2 goals together. So we should not have shortfall of essential functions. We should not overshoot our planetary boundaries, but we should stay within this safe space, this regenerative and disruptive economy. And we need to think as a public health community how we can contribute to this goal. It's called donut economics. We have applied it in my former work to a concept called health within planetary boundaries. There's a reference here, and I invite you to have a look at it, how to do that. So, by the way, presentation will be shared and will be available for all the participants to use afterwards. So, how is this used by scientists and by people? You can look at these indicators also from a country-based level. And here I've compared Malaysia and Rwanda. There's a website for it. It's already getting a little bit outdated, those data. But you see here that in a country like Malaysia, quite a lot of the basic services are foreseen now. But we have a big overshoot of some indicators linked to the rapid developments and building and consumption and production at this moment. So the material footprint is quite high in a country here. If you would, I think for Indonesia it will be a bit lower. I've seen it for countries like in the region, like Laos or Timor-Leste. Then it's really then it stays within those green ecological ceilings, but a lot of the social ceilings are not being met yet. And this is from Rwanda from a couple of years ago. So our sweet spot is to stay within those planetary boundaries. And then you can plot at it from whether you're a low or a middle income or a high income country. And that is to say that from a sustainability or sustainable development goals perspective, it's not only about moving forward, but it's also, so some countries, they need to still grow and need to grow their essential services, but other countries need to reduce and stay within limits and within those boundaries. And these are mainly the high income countries. And so this is a kind of the sweet spot. How do we come to a common but differentiated responsibilities to stay in the safe zone? And basically, this is a kind of a post-sustainable development goal perspective. I'm quite sure that a lot of the thinking, and that happens within the UN, is not talking about beyond GDP growth. We cannot endlessly grow because growth from a medical perspective, if you grow in an infinite way in human bodies, this is called cancer, which is not possible. So this is the challenge that we have, and I really look forward to discussing with you further. Let me end with 2-3 thoughts. The thought is regarding, so what would it mean for health systems? How is health systems related to this equation? Now, please realize that the healthcare sector is the second largest growing sector in globally. It expands in many countries, mainly with private services, but it comes with a cost as well, both energy-wise and also because it's for a considerable part public services or private services. There's inequities. People don't have access to it. In Indonesia, one recognizes the same as well. You have the BGPS, but there's fiscal difficulties to get the BGPS actually functioning and to fulfill the services that people expect from it. So people move to the private services, but they become only more privileged. It's more for the privilege and it's less publicly available. And this pressure, this economic pressure on healthcare, we see in many countries. Healthcare tends to grow, but for whom is it growing? And is it growing in a way that it actually promotes public health outcomes? Are we doing the right thing with our healthcare services? Should we not focus much more on primary health care and health promotion rather than on secondary and tertiary care, especially at the end of life, that are providing from a, let's say, quality of life perspective, much less outcomes than if we would focus much more on the beginning of life. So the question is, can we really, with also the limits to resources available in healthcare, should we not much more focus on the Puskas level, the community health level, where you do posyandu and other environmental health promotions? I hope I speak here to the already you are amongst those that already converted, because this is a public health authority, but there's a lot of focus on biomedical interventions, but where we can do much more at the health promotion and level. So it's about reducing complexity in healthcare systems and doing the basics much more at the local level in dealing with complex transnational problems. And that's the interesting part, because WHO has been working about it since long. I've been trained in community health medicine. We don't need doctors, we need more nurses, community health workers, Alma Ata principles on primary health care. And that's how we can engage with this problem in an effective way. We need to think beyond only climate change and in a complex, we really need to relate it to other developments in our societies. There's policy solutions. I will not go so much into it now, giving the time, but it's really about restoring justice and engaging with a more economic and climate justice movement. And I really would like to discuss with you how we relate there as a public health community. How do we see ourselves, and how can we start collaborating in this in the coming period? And I'm really looking forward to do this together with you and assist where I can. Over, Danny. I hope I stayed a little bit within time.
Thank you, Remco. Wow, so much information. I think the students get a lot of new insights for them, because I think most of the students, this is the first time for them to hear about planetary health and all these very complex things. One thing that I learned from planetary health is something that happens in other part of the world, which will somehow affect us even in the middle of nowhere. So there are a lot of things they are connected. We are connected to what happens in the global north, and they are also affected by what we are doing now in Indonesia. You already said that a lot of deforestation in Indonesia, and it somehow affect people in Africa, in the Europe, etc. And we hear a lot of things about social justice. This is something that I really like from the planetary health. We talk a lot about inequalities, and yeah, you say something about that. And I hope this can give a lot of insight for the students and participants. And before we continue to the second speaker, I again encourage everyone, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, anything, just type it in the chat. You can type it in English, and we can discuss it after the second presenter. And yes, we will go. Thank you again, Remco, for your presentations. Please stay with us, and we have discussions after the second speaker. And for the next speaker, we will have Dr. Tran T. Tuyet Han, Dr. Han from Hanoi University of Public Health, and she's gonna talk about the toxic legacy of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War and its environmental health impact. So I'm not really familiar with Agent Orange, so I hope we can learn together from Dr. Han. And yes, your time is 40 minutes. The screen is yours, Dr. Han.
Thanks, Daniel. And hi, everyone. Also, thanks Remco for very comprehensive presentation. I've learned a lot from you as well. Even climate change is one of my interests. So to continue with the session, the presentation is unlike climate change, is the global problem. This is kind of quite unique, but you can see that something happened more than 5 decades ago. Still nowadays have a long-lasting impacts on human health. And this is only a case study that illustrates the chemicals that we use in our lives can have a big impacts on the environment and in return to ourselves. So Daniel, can you hear me or can you see the slide?
Yes, I can see you, but I see not your how do you call this? This is not your slide. This is I think you use double and this is the how do you call this? The PowerPoint. So this is not the your slide. Maybe you should share. Yeah. Okay.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, no, it works.
Okay, so yes, so from my studies for about 10 years and also my PhD research on this, within just hopefully 30 minutes, I can share with you the very unique case in Vietnam about the Agent Orange and other chemicals that the US Army used during the Vietnam War. And now, after more than 5 decades, it still have a long-lasting impacts on the people and the ecosystem. So I will summarize the issue and potential impacts and also introduce to you some of the activities we have been conducted at the hotspots in Vietnam. So you can see in 1961, that is long time ago. So the US President, US Kennedy, approved the use of Agent Orange and other defoliants in Vietnam. So within about 10 years, from 62 to 71, they sprayed the chemicals over the central and south of Vietnam. The reason is Vietnam at that time, the jungle was very thick. So the airplane, they couldn't see the movement of Vietnamese soldier on the ground. So they used chemicals to destroy the forest. So the US Army on the airplane, they could see the movement of the people on the ground and they bomb. So you can see vast majority, about a quarter of Vietnam area was sprayed. And in those chemicals, there was about nearly 77 millions of liter of defoliants, but including at least 366 kilograms of dioxin as a byproduct. This was not produced on purpose, but as a byproduct in Agent Orange and other defoliant. And you can see later on, this is huge amount of toxic chemical. And the use of the Agent Orange and other defoliant destroyed about 14% areas of our forest and about 50% of mangrove forest areas in Vietnam. So you can see that very big impact on Vietnamese ecosystem and people. So what does 366 kilogram dioxin mean? You can see you don't need to worry about the equation, but I just calculate to you that according to WHO, our human body can tolerate only about 1 to 4 picogram of dioxin per kilogram of body weight per day. That means with the total population of Vietnam of around 100 million people, the body, our body can tolerate about just 1.1 to 4.3 gram of dioxin intake, yes, in 1 year. So that means this is a huge amount, 366 kilograms. And this chemical has very long-lasting life, like half-life. They stayed in the environment for many years. So in the soil, depends on the where it stayed, but the half-life can range from 25 to 100 years. So you can see the serious impacts of using chemicals, warfare, because it can stay in the environment for decades and even like hundred years and have long-lasting impact. So you can see in the map, you on the the left hand side, you can see the red colors. So this was the spraying missions in the southern in Vietnam for the 10 years during the Vietnam War. And later on, even nowadays, the right hand side are identified as the hotspot of dioxins. So these are the former US air base or the military base. So they store the Agent Orange and other defoliants at these areas, and leakings happens. So the chemicals stayed in the soil, in the environment, and stayed there for many years. These pictures, you can see that before and after spraying of the chemicals. So the forest, the mangrove forest is gone. So the movement of Vietnamese soldiers on the ground could be detected and attacked by the US Army on the airplane. So dioxin was not produced on purpose. It was a byproduct in Agent Orange, and there is a family of 75 different compounds, and the most toxic chemical in the Agent Orange family is 2378. You don't need to worry about quite long name. I just call it TCDD. It's the most toxic chemical ever produced by human. Yes, and classifies as group 1 carcinogens, meaning causing cancer in human. And this toxic, nasty chemical account for about 80 to 90% of total dioxin in Vietnam environment. Whereas in developed countries like US, England, Canada, Australia, they also have dioxin problems. Or even in Jakarta, Indonesia, you have dioxin problem from industrial process. But the dioxins, those are less toxic than the one we are having here, and much lower concentration. And we already identified 28 potential hotspots in Vietnam, and treating them, like in implementing environmental remediation, is very, very costly. You can see later on. So dioxin are linked, already have sufficient evidence to link the exposure of dioxin with many health effects. You can see in the table, the group 1 or other diseases that confirm evidence showing the association between exposure to the chemical and the human health. Group 2, they say limited or suggested evidence, meaning need more information, and also some diseases. Still in group 3, meaning lack of evidence, and group 4, no association. But you see that many diseases already confirmed linked with dioxin exposure. And there is, like on Google, there is a comprehensive reports updated every 2 years about veterans and Agent Orange updates. So you can, if you are interested in chemicals, in Agent Orange and dioxin, you can read this report online. So current levels in humans. So you see something happened more than 5 decades ago, but like in the recent decade, studies are also still find very high level of Agent Orange in people, in different foods, and in environment in Vietnam. For example, study by Stechter, you can see people in the north of Vietnam not being exposed to the Agent Orange during the war, then the dioxin in their blood only ranges about 2 parts per trillion, whereas those who live in the hotspot have average level of 28, meaning 14 times higher than the average level in the north of Vietnam. And people who live at the hotspots and like consuming the fish and locally produced food have very high level of dioxin, even those who born after the war or who born in the north of Vietnam and moved to the south and central of Vietnam. So not related to exposure during the wartime, but still have high level of dioxin because they have been exposing to the chemical during their lifetime, and they consume the food. Those are grown and catch and raised at the polluted areas, and also inhalation of dust. And you can see some of the number, the figures here. And clinical experience show the level of above 10 is abnormal and harmful for health. So you can see that many people who live at this area have elevated level of dioxin in their body. In the recent years, although the US government denied the legal responsibility, but they have aids and funding support for environmental remediation. So there are different environmental remediation projects going on. One in hotspot in Da Nang already completed, cost more than 100 million US dollar. The current one cost more, like about 300 million US dollar, but we are facing difficulty because US is currently cut the funding. The project is aiming to complete by 2030, but is in difficulty because the cutting of the funding. Yes. So those information for you to see that something happened long time ago, now still having impacts on the people's health. So in the next second part of the presentation, I will share with you what we done to deal with this, what have been done apart from clean up the site. So because we are from the public health field, we see that although the chemicals used during the wartime, but the long half-life, like 25 to 100 years, and the concentration still high. And we know that this chemical is bioaccumulated in the food chains. So we realize that the victims are not only the veterans, Vietnamese veterans and US veterans who attended the war, but also many hundreds, thousands of people living at these hotspots in the past decades since the use of the chemical until now. If they live there and they eat various high-risk foods, then they are continuously exposed to the chemicals. Yes, so we realized that, so we conducted environmental health risk assessment and public health interventions to reduce the risk for local residents. So, for example, our studies at the two sites in Bien Hoa and Da Nang air bases, which are the two most severe hotspots of dioxin in Vietnam and around the world. So you can see those, the air bases was the storage areas. You can see in the picture, leakings happened several times. So the chemicals stay in the environment for years, and studies show elevated level of this chemical on soil, mud, food, blood, and even breast milk still have very high level. So in 2010, I did a risk assessment showing the local residents was at high risk. Before that, we didn't know, because before 2002, this was a very political sensitive topic. So no discussion, almost no discussion about dioxin. Not much exchange information between Vietnam and US about this. But since 2002, the relationship between two countries, between two governments, and also the topic become less political sensitive. So since then, there are many studies and intervention. So this map, you can see this is the airport. Many environmental studies already take samples at these hotspots, and you can see level of dioxin is elevated. Green one is okay, but most of the samples have a yellow and even purple color, like over 150,000 ppt. Less than 6, or some country give the standard of less than 10 is okay for agricultural practice. But you can see very high level, and people fishing at this area. Also surrounding area, people raise chicken, buffaloes, cows, and so on. So they are at risk of eating those foods if the foods raised in this area. So dioxin in foods, the standards normally less than 0.1 picogram per gram of food. But you can see in one of the hotspots in Bien Hoa, ducks and snakehead fish and chicken and so on have hundreds, even thousands of times higher than standard. The residues very, very high. And also same thing in Da Nang. And one thing strike me. Before we thought dioxin is something happened during the wartime, and only soldiers are the victims, the veterans are the victims. But then I read a study showing 90% of dioxin in our human body come from what we eat. Then since then, we realized, okay, the risks are for much wider population because they have been eating polluted foods. So we produce lots of risk communication materials to communicate with different stakeholders at the hotspot. So we show them the current exposure pathways, mainly from foods and in the hotspot area, also from inhalation of polluted airs. And this is in Bien Hoa Air Base, where I did my PhD about 10 years ago. I took food samples surrounding the airbase. You can see here is the airbase. These are residential areas. So we took food samples surrounding here and we calculate the risk for people if they consume the foods grown and raised at these areas. You don't need to worry about the busy table. You just pay attention to some red color. You see freshwater fish or free-range chickens at these areas have high level of dioxin, like 66.6, 86.6, or even 95 picogram per gram. But like the free-range chicken have really high level of dioxin. But cage chicken, if you pay attention to here, this is in Bien Hoa Air Base. You see chicken, but if the farmers, they put in the cage, then have very low level of dioxin, only 0.1 picogram per gram. But chicken free range have very high level of dioxin. So we show the farmers the result of our assessment to show them they can change the practice of raising chicken, raising the ducks and so on, and changing the practice can reduce the risk for themselves and for the consumers of the foods that they produce. And also, you don't need to worry about this busy table. Just pay attention to the last two lines at the bottom. So we calculate for the local people if they live in Bien Hoa and if they do not consume locally produced foods, then daily intake for them for dioxin is only about 3 to 6 picogram per kilogram body weight per day. But if they live there and then they consume high-risk food, for example, free-range chickens, eggs, ducks, beef, freshwater fish, and so on, the level of exposure can range from 60 to over 100 picogram per gram. Similarly, for Da Nang, we calculate. You can see if they live there, but they don't eat those food, the exposure level is kind of okay. But if they do live there, eat those food, the exposure level can go up to 148 picogram per gram, whereas the recommendation level, tolerable daily intake, is the amount of chemical that our human body can intake daily and can tolerate with it without causing severe harm, is only from 1 to 4. So you can see if people live there, they change the practice, the exposure level is kind of nearly within the acceptable level. But if they don't follow, then exposure level is very high. So these pictures I took, you can see this at the hotspots. And because it was sensitive topic, no one told them. Even the health staff at that time, before we did our intervention, they didn't know what dioxin was, where it present in the environment, how it could get into the body, what health effects it caused to the people. Health staff didn't know, different sectors didn't know, local people didn't know. So you see that they raised cows, buffaloes, and fishings, and so on. And the knowledge was very low. And we also conducted study to see the food consumption frequency. And we found that they consume this kind of foods quite frequent. So after the baseline assessment, we did our intervention, mainly to change the practice, to inform people about the risk and to change the practice to reduce the risk for them of exposing to this nasty chemical that used during the wartime. So involving different stakeholders. So you can see public health or planetary health, as the Remco mentioned, is the transdisciplinary approach. We need to work with people from this different disciplines to do intervention. So we develop lots of materials focusing, targeting different groups of people, like the health staff, the food preparations, the people who are responsible to prepare foods for the family, or policymakers. We advocate for them to give the ban of fishing in identified canals and lakes and ponds and rivers. So the government, the local government bans the fishings, and so raising chickens and raising some animals in some certain areas. Yes, and then we conducted our risk communication at household level. After training, the collaborator went to every household at the 2 hotspots to tell the people what they should do and what they should not do, and also to policymaker, as I mentioned. So this also does share with you some of the results. Pre and post intervention, you see that the knowledge of people improve about the existence of dioxin in the environment. You can see improve, but not 100% people knew. Only around like 37 or 69 or 80. So improve, but not very good. Or even the roots of dioxin exposure about food consumption after intervention, about 90% of people knew. Yes, but still not 100%. Yes, and the potential high-risk foods after intervention, more people knew that, okay, freshwater fish, animal fats, high-risk foods, and percentage of people don't know decrease, but not as good as we expected. The intervention was about 1 year time. Similarly, the measure to prevent dioxin exposure after intervention, more people like they eat less freshwater fish, or they cut off fat during the preparation, or eat less eggs or milk produced in polluted areas. So they do change knowledge and practice positively, but not as good as we wanted. And also the practice to reduce the risk of exposure in Da Nang before intervention, after intervention, and also I follow up 2 years after intervention. So you can see that the practice still remain, but not 100% people practicing. Yes, so those are very short summaries of the case studies that are very unique to Vietnam. And you can see that decades after the war, even 5 decades, now 6 decades after the spraying of the chemicals, local residents still facing the risk of exposing to the nasty chemical if they consume locally produced foods. And environmental remediation are very, very expensive and only focused inside the airbase, like 300 million US dollar. Only help to clean up inside the Bien Hoa airbase, but people live surrounding. It has been decades, so the chemical already spreading to surrounding area. Although the level is not that high compared to inside the airbase, but still not safe for agriculture practice. So need to further communicate to people, need to continue to and expand to other areas to reduce the risk for local people. Yes, and also this have something to do with also with culture and belief as well. So you can see in Vietnam, we believe on the first day of the month or 15 days of the month, if we release fish to the river, can bring luck to the family. So in these areas, people don't, when we did our intervention, we tell people not to fish here, and then people also releasing fish on the first day of the month. So the density of the fish in these areas increased. So this picture, this was me in the field. In Bien Hoa Air Base and Da Nang Air Base, we went there and I accidentally met 3 men just using very simple net, and within few minutes, they could catch about 5 to 7 kilograms of fish. And these were people from other areas. But you can see for public health, this is dangerous because local people don't fish and don't eat the fish here. But if other people from other areas, they come here and they fish and they get the fish back to their areas and to eat or to sell, then the risk is moving from this area to other areas. So to have a banning and warning is the first thing, but enforcement, safeguarding is also important. Yes, so very brief presentation because I have only 40 minutes, so just share with you. And if you interest there are lots of publications we already published about different aspects of these issues, like the knowledge, attitude, and practice, or environmental health risk assessments, and so on. Yeah, so I'm looking forward for questions from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Han. Wow, very interesting presentations. Yeah, it's very surprising that the people in that area are born without knowing that they are at the very high risk of chemical contaminations. So, and they bear the burden of generations before them, 60 years before them. They know nothing about that, but they bear the burden. So yeah, it's very interesting study. So somehow it just reminds me that everything that we do in the environments, it will affect our children's and grandchildren's. So we have to think carefully about any activities, industry, and everything's because it will somehow affect generations before, after us. Yeah, very interesting study. Thank you, Dr. Han. And now we want to have a discussions and questions. I want to ask if, yeah, okay, there's a one questions just appear in the Zoom chat. And yeah, I again, and and everyone, if you have any questions, any thought, comments, please type it in the chat. Or because we still have time, actually, it's quite 20 minutes, more than 20 minutes. So if you want to speak, just open your microphone and you can ask direct, you comment directly. I think there are a lot of comments. It's better to say in words rather than typing it. Yeah, if you have any you want to speak up, please raise your hand so I can. If anyone want to say something before we ask the questions in this Zoom chat, or if you want to ask directly the question, is also fine. Anyone want to speak, want to say something, comment? Nope. Go directly to Zoom chat. Okay. Yeah, we have the first questions, first comment from Lintang Aryani, and to both of you. Do you think that current environmental health issues are closely intertwined with political issue? Wow, this is very good questions, and meaning that in addition to implementing interventions to mitigate environmental damage, it is also necessary to foster supportive political environment. And how can these two aspects be pursued simultaneously? I think the first questions go to for Dr. Remco, but if you want to answer, you can answer it as well. So maybe at first I will go to Dr. Remco to respond to the first question.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. The answer is yes, it's deeply political, this issue. I'm trying to see what would be the best answer. It has to do with power and also historical power relations, colonial relations between countries that enabled a set of countries, namely mainly European ones, to have a relative advantage to industrialize over others, and it had to do also with the extraction of resources and forced trade that took place. I don't need to talk about Indonesian-Dutch relations there, but that legacy that still continues. It's although we have autonomous countries, there are enforced power relations, including in trade and in economic regimes, that make that some countries benefit much more from globalization than others. And these are political discussions. That is changing now. I think we see it in the Asian region, the rising of the BRICS, the relatively decline of the United States. But that has, of course, impact also how countries engage with the climate regime and what they finance or not in addressing these issues. The core principle in the climate regime is common but differentiated principles. All climates have responsibility. All countries have responsibilities in making climate action possible, but there's much more responsibility from those that historically have industrialized first. And that's why especially like you hear Vanuatu and other Pacific countries speaking about climate injustice because they bear the burden. But there's not an enforcement regime. That's the thing. We cannot send in a military intervention to force countries to actually take climate action. That's not how cooperation under the UN works. And this is a diplomatic problem in the way how we cooperate. And you see that cooperation is less than it was maybe 5 to 10 years ago, with the US now withdrawing. But yes, so it means also to create the alliances to make it happen. But I think we should really understand that this is such a deeply transnational challenging situation that we need to collaborate, whether we like it or not. And but that's something to pursue much more than only a technical mitigation response. It requires us as a public health community also to seek alliances with those parliamentarians, those who are working in policy spaces to make that possible. So it's really an encouragement also to look beyond our disciplinary boundaries and our shadows and to engage there. I hope this makes some sense. Over.
Thank you, Remco. And the second questions to Dr. Han, based on the case of Agent Orange, what good practices has Vietnam implemented that have helped bring renewed attention to the direction issue and make it less politically sensitive topic? Again, this is another related political things. So what do you say about this, Dr. Han?
Yes, during after the war, the topic was very sensitive. Not only about that topic, but I mean the relationship between the two governments was quite tense. But in the recent years, we see very good progress. And for scientific, I think for the Agent Orange and dioxin issue, one good movement was in 2002 and following years, the two countries organized a joint conference. So sharing the studies between the Vietnamese scientists and also US scientists and other scientists from other countries. So we organized joint Vietnam-US conference on Agent Orange and dioxins. And also, if you attended annually, there is an international conference on persistent organic pollutants. And during the 2000s, 2010s, until the few years ago, there have been always one session on Vietnam session. So all the studies on Agent Orange and dioxin conducted in Vietnam present at that conference. So I think raising voice scientifically between the scientists between the two countries also help to understand about the topics. But of course, we can say that one thing that still not achieved is the US government still don't recognize this as a legal responsibility, only funding in terms of aids and environmental supports. And Vietnam, also the Agent Orange victims, they brought the case to U.S. court twice, but we lost. And then one challenge is if the court asks about scientific evidence to show the real impact of Agent Orange and dioxin on Vietnamese people, then we don't have very good scientific evidence, because in order to conduct those kind of studies, very, very costly, like cohort study, for follow up people for like 30, 40 years. And then the testing of the dioxin in the body is very expensive, like over $1,000 per sample. And before, we didn't have that capacity. No laboratory in Vietnam before could do the analysis. So I mean, lots of difficulty. So if brought the case to the court and don't show the real damage, then it's very difficult to prove the damage. So you can see if one person have cancer, can caused by dioxin, or can caused by arsenic, or can caused by other environmental chemicals. Yes, so very difficult. So although we achieve some progress in the relationship and with the joint conference and joint studies, but still remain some challenges about showing the real impacts, and also to show the responsibility of the U.S. government to what have been done. So now we're looking for the future, not making the same mistake again, raising these issues to other countries, that something you use today can cause the impacts on the ecosystem and on human health 100 years to come. So be careful with your decision. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Han. Yeah, very interesting answer. I would say that we need a lot of political intentions to, or maybe global political intentions to change the situations. It's not just one country, but we need to collaborate together. I remember presentations from Remco that we need cross-boundary collaborations to change the situations. And there is another question follow-up, I think very close to the previous questions, just follow-up question from Dr. Anissa Utamirov. By the way, Dr. Anissa is one of our staff here, and she works a lot with ecology and emerging contaminants, environmental health. So yeah, maybe Dr. Anissa, you can connect with both Remco and Dr. Han. But your question is about, this is very interesting questions, and I want to get your opinion also, maybe not just to Remco, but also to Dr. Han, because many policies still prioritize economic growth over sustainability, and this is very interesting. I think it can be a very debate about this, and how can we encourage cross-sector collaborations and public engagement? Or maybe I will add. I want to add that how can we balance the economic growth and sustainability and people health, environmental health, and planetary health? This is difficult questions, I think, but yeah, I want to hear your opinion about this. So maybe Remco or Han, you want to answer first? Wants to answer to this?
Let me try to answer the question. If you agree, I also take into consideration the question that follows, which is about adaptive systems and how to secure both environmental and human well-being in the next 50 years.
Yeah.
I ask you to go, and I will type it in the chat, to go back to the original thinking of the limits to growth from 50 years ago, which was the start of the sustainability movement. We need to see our economies not so much as an outcome that we need to pursue, but as a means for well-being and for human thriving and prosperity. So the economy is a social construct and not something that is a given. And we do it often, flip it the other way around. We do things because it's good for the economy. And the economy is often measured in GDP growth, which is basically how much we consume and produce. Nothing more than that. So if we produce bullets, that's good for the economy. If we care for people and we don't, and it's reciprocal, it's not measured as part of our current economies. This is how we, and this is a very westernized economic limited way of thinking about what an economy should do, which is not aligned with how many societies traditionally have organized their economic exchange. So we need to go back into the economic theory and really think about that the economy should support, economic activity should support how we fare as humans, and it should restore some of the ecosystem damages that are there. And to do so, we need to value much more things that are not valued in our current economies, which is there are many things, but it includes also the care and the informal practices of how people relate to each other. But at the moment, our current capitalist, let's say, systems, much influenced through Western culture and norms, make that we consume enormously, we produce enormously. I look the malls here in Kuala Lumpur, it's crazy. They did not exist even 30, 40 years ago, also not in Yogyakarta. The way how it expands and how people relate their well-being to how much they consume, how much they are on, how much they obtain from Amazon and other platforms, how much they spend on social media. It requires us to educate also the younger generation that the good life is something different. And it starts really, I believe, with education and exchange. The how to do that's really something that that we need to collaborate on. But it's also to say the way we do it at the moment, it is unsustainable. And if we keep on overshooting those boundaries, it will come back to us. Whether we like it or not, things will transform, but we need to transform in a pleasant way rather than that we cannot control it. And the longer we wait, the longer we are being shocked by it. And the shock can be another pandemic. It can be that for instance, that there might be a sudden disease that affects the banana plantations, and suddenly you have a massive dying of certain fruits or food that is available. So we need to do it whether we like it or not. And I think this really it's a mind shift rather than an economic shift. And that mind shift, this is where we in our communities can start.
Thank you. Very good answer. Yes, I like it. As you say in your presentation, that planetary health is a new paradigms, and the economists they need to learn and know these new topics, new mindsets. So yeah, everything is not just about money, but about the environment, about the people, and the relations between them. Yes, that's very interesting things that we need to discuss with the economists. And yeah, Dr. Han, do you want to add something to this question,
Yeah.
this topic? Yeah.
Yes, I agree, but I would like to add, I think showing economic return or like the in terms of impacts on economic loss also is important. I can give an example. So in Vietnam, before people protect the tobacco industry, they say tobacco industry is very important. Bring lots of tax, pay a lot of tax for Vietnam government. Every year they pay like 26 thousands billions Vietnamese dong for the tax. But then there is a study show the economic loss due to diseases that link to tobacco is 108,000 billion Vietnamese dong, meaning 4 times higher than the tax that the tobacco industry pay. So we need those kind of study to show the environmental damage and the health loss due to the development, to put on the table to show, okay, you develop that this, you earn this money, but then you lost this kind of more money because of health problems, because of ecosystem is collapsed. So I think health economics and other experts in the field to show to quantify the impacts in terms of money, then put on the table for policies to choose is also important.
Thank you. Wow, it's very nice example because we have a long as well in Indonesia about this. I think 1 month ago, the Ministry of Economics comments about they want to protect the tobacco industry, but the health people, we are of course we are against this this policy. So yeah, very good, very nice example. Yeah, maybe I don't know whether in Indonesia there's a study about this comparing the loss, the economic loss due to the tobacco industry. But I will check it. It's very interesting thing to follow up. Thank you. And yes, we go to the next questions from. I think this is to Dr. Han about the from Dr. Anissa. Specific types of environmental remediations have been implemented in the polluted areas of Danang, and based on the current monitoring results, what can we say about the conditions now? And this is the last questions: how can we effectively build public trust and reassure the community of the safety of the remediated sites? This is comprehensive questions, I think. Dr. Han, if you have any comments, thought on this, please.
Yes, I put some information on the chat. So the remediation projects in Da Nang are already completed, and what they did was the contaminated soil and sediment that was excavated, and they placed in enclosed containment structure built on the ground, and then they treat with like thermal resorption technology, meaning heating the soil and sediment to high temperature to destroy the dioxins. And after the remediation projects, they do environmental monitoring, the air and the soil and the sediments to test for dioxin concentration, and the levels was reduced to acceptable level below 1000 ppt for the soil. So the reduced dramatically. And then I put the link there. You can, if you are interested, you can look at the full details about the projects on the link. And for the trust, we need risk communication. So recent study show that the level of dioxin in the soil and in the air in Da Nang airbase is acceptable level. But as I mentioned, the remediation projects only occur inside the airbase, whereas in the past decades, the dioxin already spreading out other surrounding area, although the concentration below 1000 ppt is not required for remediation. But for agricultural practice, it should be less than 10. So that means people still okay to live there, but if they raise chicken, raise cows, buffaloes, and catching fish, it's not safe for them. So need to make sure people live there, but change the practice. Although the inside is safe now, but the outside is still there. Not too high level, but not accept level for the agricultural practice. Yes. So in the chat, I already put the link to the remediation projects.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Han. And let me check. I think, yeah, we don't have any questions. I just want to ask again if there's a questions from participants, from students to both speakers. No? 3, 2, 1, close. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much to both speakers, Dr. Remco and Dr. Han. It's an honor to have you here with us. And yeah, unfortunately, we cannot. Yeah, let's hope that one day we can invite both of you to come to Jogja and we can have a webinar, we can have a lecture here and we can have conversations, discussions with both of you. And yeah, before we close, let's have a picture together. So yeah, can everyone, if possible, I may ask you to open your camera so we can have a pic together. Students, participants, if you can open your camera, please, so we can, yes. Yeah, who wants to take picture? Mbak Didi, you are still mute, Mbak. Masih di mute, Mbak. Please, everyone, if you can open your camera, if no problems, technical problems, internet connections, you can open your camera and we can have a picture together. Mbak Didi, bisa nggak ambil ini ya? Ambil gambarnya. Oh, Mas Mias. Mas Mias mana? Mas Mias?
Yes.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, pause. Okay.
Okay, enough?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Mias.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, especially for our speakers from Malaysia and Vietnam, Dr. Remco and Dr. Han. Please give a round of applause. If you can use any emojis or stickers to give them, to thank them for the very great presentation and insight. And yes, I thank also everyone who participated in the Wednesday seminar, give any input, all questions. We hope that today's sessions can give a lot of insight for us. We learn a lot of things, not just from Indonesia case, but we learn a lot from the global perspective that we are connected to each other. We learn from about planetary health. We learn also from Dr. Han about what happens in Vietnam. I hope that we are in Indonesia, we can take it as examples. We need to change our mind, renew our minds that we have to protect the environments, because everything happen in environments will affect us as well. So thank you again for all the participants, and I wish you all wonderful day. And thank you for Remco, thank you for Han, and see you everyone in the next Wednesday seminar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Daniel.
Sampai bertemu lagi.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.